channel. You're on BookTube, and welcome. So today I was going to record a different video, but we have ice storms, and so the collaboration has been swapped out, so you're getting the AuthorTube video today. It's usually my third week of the month, but now it will be the second. What's on tap for AuthorTube today? Well, still going from my survey. The second topic was, how does your family background influence your writing? The one that got the second most votes. So I thought I'd break down something that we take for granted as a kid of certain privilege, and when we look back on it, it's like, oh, that's a very different experience for some people. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my family heritage or background, ethnic background, what I knew about it growing up, what I know about it now after 23andMe, and how I think about it differently and how that has influenced my writing. I've touched a little bit on this before, but not exactly this angle and in this depth. So, what did I know growing up about my ethnic makeup? Well, I knew that I had Irish, English, Czech, French, German, and Native American heritage. So that's 6. And I'll let you guess at this point which ones turned out wrong. Yeah, there's 2. It didn't really affect the writing part, so I'll tell you up front. We don't have any evidence of any English family in the background. We think it was just a name change. And we don't have any evidence of a Native American in the background, except a family tale and a photograph that's in someone's memory, and that's it. So we haven't been able to pursue that any further in birth records or anything. So what I'm left with, the true truth, is Irish, Czech, French, and German. And when I think about this now, not through a writer lens, just through a person lens, one, I think in grade school, how this exercise would have been extremely off-putting for anyone who is African American. And there's only one kid in my school, so that didn't come up too much. But now I'm thinking back and thinking about what his experience might have been and how that could have been very painful because you don't always know where you came from. So that's the first thing I think of. Knowing is power and privilege. And the second thing I think of is how this is different even for people who are still in those countries. America is such a strange place in that respect, right? So for someone who has a blend of immigrant backgrounds like I do, it's fun to know, oh, like when you have a potluck day for your heritage and you bring something that, you know, someone in your family used to cook in the old country. This is like the mainstream thought, I think, of growing up in America. That's all fine and dandy. But how do people from those countries perceive this as an American identity? It's sort of strange to think about, right? So I've seen this one guy, Mackay some number, on TikTok, and he is in favor of the independence referendum, and he has a lot of interesting Scottish politics in his videos. So I like watching him talk about the differences and catching up, and he's funny. And he's also a language nerd, so he has a lot of cool language stuff. But he specifically called out Americans who are like white power representatives, saying that they harken back to their Scottish roots and using that as a base to justify looking down on other people, and how that was terrible, and how Americans with Scottish roots or heritage can come to Scotland and, you know, cast about and think, oh, they really belong here, and oh, they really derive meaning from being here when they haven't grown up there, they don't, you know, have any lived experience there. And so he turns a real jaundiced eye on that sort of claiming and justification, and I think that's totally valid. But if you were here last fall, you heard me talk about my definition of home and how I have this kind of feeling of belonging in places where they were Celtic culture, like Ireland and Scotland. Partly due to my background and partly just due to environmental factors of how I feel when I'm in those places, right? So, again, this weird American lens / European immigrant experience. And how does that fit itself into my writing? Well, so growing up with these backgrounds and influences, Irish definitely led me down the path of wanting to learn Celtic languages, which I have a little bit, wanting to travel there, which I definitely have done, and met family there, and also picking up the historical lens that many Irish people have, which is that Ireland was oppressed for like 500 years by Great Britain, and there's been a lot of processing of that and fighting for rights and separation, and it's ended up the way it is now with Northern Ireland sectioned off. There is a less vehement feeling of break the shackles of the oppressor or the colonizer, or however you want to call it. But growing up in the 80s, there was definitely still this feeling of, you know, the English kind of thing. I think I got from that the way that I identify with the underdog in a fight and want to kick off the oppressor. That's like the way I always identify with people in a situation. It's always with the weaker or the maligned or the oppressed, and listening to their side of the story first. That also affected what I chose for my course of study, I think. I studied political science and French in college, and then got a master's in international relations, believing that I wanted to understand how countries interact, how power interactions can be affected, and how less developed countries can be helped in that arena. So the other ones besides Irish are Czech, which I have traveled to, but I haven't done much else with. French, which I've learned the language and I have traveled to and I love. And German, which I haven't done much with either. So there you go. And, okay, getting closer to the writing, I promise. When I was studying this, and also when I was thinking about my career, I was seeing this sort of oppressed thing as a binary, and understanding it as like monolithic entities in a fight. And that has really changed, especially when I come down to writing about individual struggles. So research has edged me to see at a more granular level, I think, and that energy is still there, and I still identify with the underdog, but I don't see that as the whole nation anymore. I look at the landowning aristocracy in the 19th century, since that's when I do most of my writing, and how they interacted with middle managers. So in my last book, Storm, Rack, and Spindrift, there's someone in the position of a middle manager, and they're questioning their own right to be there, but they're also seeing what people above them on the societal ladder are doing and questioning their right to be there. So in terms of identity and social power in the social structure, this is starting some really interesting questions for me. Then you have the middle managers and their relationships with government appointees and sinecures, so people who are perhaps useless, perhaps haven't earned their position, versus people who have worked their way up and feel more deserving of that income or security. And so you've got different backgrounds with maybe same income, but that's not all their identity because of the way things work, and this is mostly in the UK in this example. Then you've got immigration, you've got first generation versus second generation. And in The Grasping Root, there's this tension of the parents and the old power structures and how things were decided versus the new nation and how people are going to change those structures and work to find their own happiness, and whether they're going to assimilate or whether they're going to keep their culture in some other way or return to the land from whence they came, right? There's several choices there. So that's an interesting relationship. There's also law enforcement versus precarious workers or prescribed populations. By that, I mean people who have been traditionally oppressed in the past, like women and blacks and natives. And this could obviously correlate to oppressor and oppressed, but it could also be mixed in there, right? So think, for instance, contemporary times about people who work for the Border Patrol who were second generation immigrants, right? So how does that identity and power structure interact, and how do you bring out those conflicts and those heartbreaking stories, or, you know, things that make people think about their own decisions and positions, which is what I really want to do. So yes, what I want to do is to keep going back into this, tearing apart those monoliths that people have been taught in history class maybe, and say who is fighting against whom, why, did it make sense, did they get their aim, their goal. And the last one I had on this list was thinking about the government in power versus those outside the structures. So like the good old boys network, or the people who are in the church religion versus those who are not, or in a dissenting religion, or protesting religion, as they used to say. And this comes up in the Caning. So like the first of the series, this is a question of, do you know people in power? Do you have connections? And this is sort of like the 19th century, I want to call it a trope, but I don't think that's right. The 19th century concept of having connections with an X.
She has no money, no connections, nothing that can tempt him.
Right? Is there wealth? Is it old wealth or new wealth? Are there connections? And you know, that's basically it in terms of the marriage market. So my writing has been a series of getting more and more granular with these different types of conflicts in different eras that I've explored, and hopefully drawing out more threads, like, you know, like a big conspiracy theory board of threads, rather than just the binary of good, bad, because I don't think we need more of those types of books in this day and age. I think we need more books that get under the surface, that get into the details, that make people think about, why is it right? Why is it good? Why do I believe this? And yeah. So one last note I had was that, and don't hate me, AntiOutlanders, I thought Diana Gabaldon did a really good job painting the conflicts and loyalty for someone who, okay, there's lots of different overlapping circles here, which is part of why it's so amazingly plotted. So you have Jamie Fraser, who comes to North Carolina. He's got, you know, several aliases behind him that are now criminal, but he's also got issues with the crown. He's got issues with the future of the war, which he knows is going to happen. And in between trying to please these two masters, the patriots and the loyalists, he's, you know, got lots of different conflicting loyalties. And in the series, the TV series, they give him an additional one, which is his friend, blanking on his name, begins with an M, is still alive. In the books, he's dead, but in the TV series, he's still alive, and he's pulling him a third way. So, yes, this is what makes books exciting and brings history to life, in my opinion. Triangulating, you know, quadrupleizing, making things more dimensional, because that is real life. That is what makes us feel like we care about the characters, right? They could be people now. That is my journey from ethnic makeup as a child in elementary school to exploring and researching ethnic background now, and what it makes me do with my writing. So I hope that was interesting. Thanks for attending my TED Talk on AuthorTube. Tell me what you think about this, maybe what you've looked into in your background, how you feel about those sorts of designations if you're not an American and you have some sort of commentary about American identity. I'd love to hear about it. And I did not want to neglect to mention we're coming up on March, so I want you to get ready with those March of the Modern reads. I just wanted to remind anyone who's new to the channel, I'm doing a readathon in March. It's about books from 1901, right after Victober, to 1945, which is like the end of the modern era when we start getting loopy with postmodern stuff. So any of the books written in that period, especially women's voices, voices from non-English speaking countries, and other marginalized populations. So I've got a bingo board for y'all, I've got a giveaway at the end, and I've got Buddy Read sign up. So I will put my link to the blog where all that information lives for you to check it out, and I hope to see you on the Google Doc. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. So let's go. Where were they going with this? Royalists. They're not called royalists. Okay.